Now that's the first episode of UBC Archives documentary called The Commander-in-Chief of the CIC Files. Now that's the very first one. It happened in 1986, 35 years ago. President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni visited the people of Teso in Soroti town, specifically at the Uhuru Park. And one of the pledges that he made on that day, 35 years ago, was that he would end and manage the problem of the Karamojong cattle rustlers. It's history, and I think all of us now have lived to testify to that. I just want to pick a comment from the gentleman in studios briefly, just before we get into the issues of our Pan-African Friday. Ndugu JJ Bakari Kwira with us in studios. Very good morning, welcome. And let me just hear your voice on what the president has said.
I think the president is spot on. What makes me happy that what he said that time, he still stands by that philosophical outlook.
Okay.
He said, don't fight allies, fight the enemy. If you fight the allies, you'll be recruiting them to the enemy camp, and they'll come and fight you, and they will throw you out.
Okay.
And up to today, that's the philosophy which stands with. Even we went ahead in the current space, even to go and recruit from the enemy camp. And that's what has caused the relative peace that we have in this country.
And the national unity.
And the national unity.
Okay.
So, we know LRA forces, the CONY forces, all the interventions of amnesty, we are tailored towards that. Okay. So that one makes me so happy, and I feel that I want to say that let all Ugandans full pursuit of that philosophical outlook and guidance of the president.
Okay. Well, Council Robert Tumwesige, you're also very welcome. Thank you so much for joining our Pan-African Friday panel here. And just a comment on His Excellency's 1986 address in Soroti.
I think the statement is very correct, because in the first place there is no need why we should be fighting in Uganda, because we are the same people, we are brothers and sisters. So I hope that that statement of the president that he made in 1985, 86, yes, ends any fighting, because there is no need of fighting in Uganda. We are brothers and sisters, and there is no need for brothers and sisters to fight. So we should agree amicably and move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ndugu wako, karibu.
Yeah, asante sana. Well, thank you very much, Ndugu Jagenda and the colleagues here. Well, the president's statement one is, of course, UPDF has demonstrated their ability to secure lives and property of Ugandans, but also extending their expertise to other African countries, that is in the Pan-African spirit. On the issue of the cattle issue in Teso, I think it takes two dimensions. One would say that the Karamojong problem could have been silenced because there are no more cows to steal in Teso anyway, because the cows then in Teso and the cows now, actually see there is a very, very big gap. But also secondly, of course, to the president's commitment of one, sensitizing and empowering the Karimajongs, and thirdly, of course, the capacity of UPDF.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Finally, from you, Ndugu Mtuta, let me also hear from you very briefly on the speech in Soroti here.
I think one of the, among the 10 points that were highlighted by the administration, that's one of the points I think that has been successfully executed, because Karamoja had been a convergence of insecurity. As of course you have proliferation of guns from Sudan, from Kenya, and then the wrong elements are using that corridor to cause a lot of havoc in other countries actually. But I think the peace that we see now in Karamoja, of course, notwithstanding the few pockets of Agara that you also witnessed, is that that commitment has been made, and if there is any credit to be given, I think we need to, because Karamoja has really now, a lot has changed from the type of Karamoja that we knew to the type of Karamoja that is existing today. But at the same time, of course, Akol seemed to be thinking that maybe the rustling has stopped because there are no more cows to rustle. But it went beyond the cows. There were many other things that were happening. The sale of guns, of course, you would go to a market in Karamoja and you buy bullets in kilograms. Now, all those things have changed, and I think the NRM has delivered on that promise.
Okay. Well, very important. And let me start with you, Ndugu Mututa, on a Pan-African Friday now. To just remind the people that today is 1st of October, 2021, and this day specifically is also a day that is dubbed, called the International Day of the Older Persons. And later today, the President will be speaking to us on this particular day as we commemorate and celebrate together with the older persons. Earlier on in studios, just before you came in our first hour of the Pan-African Friday, I had two gentlemen from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, and from the Parliament of Uganda, of course, representing and advocating for the older persons. And the President will be speaking to us later. But from the older persons talk and from all these other issues, let's get to our discussion today. And we just want to answer a question, whether we think that change in leadership really translates into development on our continent. Everywhere you go on the continent, especially in our political spaces, we talk about our development is tagged to our democracies or our politics. And one of the issues here is a change of governments or change in leadership. You have a leader who has stayed in power, for example, for so many years, and that's why the country is not developing. There are also countries where you find leaders are changing frequently. After every other 5 or 10 years, you have a new leader, you have a new leader, you have a new leader, but the content still seems to be the same. And we just want to answer a question whether we think, Ndugu Mtuta, I'll start with you, set the tone, set the pace for us to answer the question whether you think that the change in leadership is actually the lasting solution to Africa's enormous problems.
I think it goes even beyond the African continent when it comes to changing of leaders and how we change them, the transitions. Because when you look at Africa, I think we are having elections more or less every other time, and we've been coming here discussing this country is electing, this country is electing. And now we have this new wave of grabbing power by force, that you want it as urgently as possible and badly, that and you must have it. And we have also had those cases, but we also have also the situation of others saying, I think we are not going to have this power. Now, one other thing we also need to look at, while we look at the changing of power, I think there's also need to analyze power itself. What does it mean to have this power? And what is this power we're talking about? Because everyone, I think, has the power, but there's that power that we're talking about, and we're talking about the state power. And what it means to have that state power. In African tradition, for example, we have the normal systems of leadership, the families, the clans, the tribes, and to be able to be a leader in any of those ones, at least in the African context, so the number of things that you seem to have, attributes that you must possess, that this person who is taking this power must be trusted. This person who is taking power must be stable, at least in the mind, and all these things. But now, when it comes to these power grabs, if the change helps, is where we're getting problems. Because we have seen in countries where power has been grabbed, but even people fail now what to do next. The thing which people, because we have seen this, when power was changed in Sudan, you would expect that now at least there's going to be peace in the country, and but later on, a few months, were already having problems. That people who thought they had taken power, they realized actually there was no power they took. In other words, power as an element is that preserve of a particular group. That is the rest of us cede our power to them to be able to manage the issues on our behalf. Now, we also saw, because in Africa, at least in the recent past, where we have had these power struggles and the power changes and power transfers, people have talked of corruption, they have talked of bad leadership, they have talked of nepotism and that kind of stuff. But then, a few years down the road, you remember in Mali when the first coup, the last coup took place. It only took another 9 months, then you have another coup. So was there that corruption that too much in that few months, so that another coup had to take place? And we saw in Zimbabwe when Comrade Mugabe was removed, they said bad leadership, corruption, blah blah. We are hearing the same stories today. So for me, I think changing of leadership is necessary, because no man is going to be there permanently. But as we change, let's also look at what we have achieved so far and what do we need to be achieved next. And I have liked the South Africans. For them, you have a plan to work within. Now, most of the African leaders and us, the people, think that once we throw out a leader, then we have another leader. This leader is going to be very different, and so we are going to get A, B, C, D. But we also don't look at the environment in which the former leader has been operating, and the systems under which the leadership has been operating. In Sudan, for example, when they removed President Bashir, the population thought Bashir was a problem. But you know, you removed the president, but the army remained the same. Now, for example, your friend Domboya, he removed the president, but the same president is still there. You have not completely gotten rid of the president, and now there is who should be what do we do with this man? Now those are the dynamics of power, that sometimes power is accredited to individuals, not to whoever may grab it. You can grab it but still don't have it, or you can have it, but some other person is possessing it. That also happens, especially in the African context. So for me, what I think is that changing of leadership is very okay, but we also need to look at how to change and what do we emphasize with that change, because sometimes we don't look at the ramifications of that change. That you change, then tomorrow you begin still lamenting over the same things that you have, even, worse, I want to say sometimes a person grabs power, but even behaves even worse than the predecessors. And I think I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but I'm thinking this is likely going to happen with my friend in Guinea. Unless something happens, like the African leaders are coming in to help, because if that's
wasn't
not done,
sworn in, or he's taking oath of office today? Wasn't he sworn in?
Yes.
He's going to be soon today.
He's going to be sworn in today.
Yes.
Yes. For a time that nobody knows,
Exactly.
but he's there to prepare for the next election.
Yeah. So
yes.
whatever might happen in that country, we are yet to see, but we pray that they move the right
okay,
direction.
just like people do not know what could be happening now in Chad after President Idris Dabi's assassination.
Exactly.
At the beginning of this year, no, somewhere in mid this year.
Yeah.
Yes, Ndugu Akol, before I get to the guests, let me hear your thoughts on what we are discussing this morning.
Well, thank you, Ndugu Jagenda. I think change is a fact of life, we all know that. And as Shakespeare puts it, not may endure but mutability, of course talking about that change is the only permanent factor. Now let's look at, I'll give an example of Uganda, because you remember, Uganda actually can give us a very, very good background to the discussing this topic. From 1979 to about 1980, that short period, we had about 4 or 5 presidents. So those were the changes that we had. So the issue is that how do we get the changes? When the change in leadership is constitutional, when the change in leadership reflects the will of the people, when the change of leadership is institutionalized, definitely it sets the pace for development. Now look at 1986, when President Museveni comes, takes over, overthrows, that is the junta, and takes over and becomes the president. He worked hard, one, to constitutionalize, to institutionalize the change. And indeed, since 1986 up to today, you realize that apart from him who has been the constant, but in other positions, there have been changes. The vice presidents, at least we've had about 4 or 5, the prime minister, the army commander. So there have been those changes, and those changes are there for a purpose. Now let's look at other countries. I'll look at a country like Zambia, that has just had their elections. Of course, we see that Comrade Kenneth Kaunda became the first African president to concede defeat and handing over power to the opposition. In other words, he set the pace for whoever will come after him to accept change. That once people have decided, and indeed, they've had changes in leadership, and every leader is credited for having come up with particular developments. Now, change in leadership does not mean that all is going to be rosy. Of course, you may change a leadership to a bad leader, but once the law is very clear on how somebody ascends to power and how somebody is removed from power, people can tolerate a bad leader for the 4 or 5 years, and perhaps after the elections, during the elections, they can say, look here, we are tired of you, we are bringing on another person. Now the other example I want to bring here is Nigeria. Nigeria, before Olusegun Obasanjo came in, was a state where it was described as where the army giveth and taketh power. Now that you'd only ascend to power through the army. But when strongman Abacha dies, I think the army said, look here, we should hand over to civilian. And since then, we've seen that they've had stable changes through elections. We had Olusegun Obasanjo. After his 8 years, we had Yaradua. Yaradua dies midway. We had Goodluck Jonathan. And now we have Buhari. So you can see. And now they have even tried to resolve the issue of the religious tensions. That at least once the president is Christian, the other should be Muslim. When the president is Muslim, so they are now trying to see how so that they can always have changes that do not necessarily cause bloodshed, that do not necessarily see the army actually pulling out the
well, thank you. I think Ndugu Cole, the issue here is not just changing power, that there is no bloodshed. There is not just changing power that we see it moving from Jagenda to JJ to Mututa to so and so. Majority of Africans do compare African democracies to the Western democracies. The discussion is now on the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, who is been there for 5 terms, I think, now exiting. They'll talk about the president of France, for example, where it's been moving. We've seen them moving from, the Sarkozys and now to Macron. They will talk about the United States, especially. We love doing comparisons to the US and say, look, it came from so and so. Normally here, whenever we go through an election, the comparison will be since 1986, when President Museveni was coming into power, X was the president in the United States, and President Museveni is being elected again in 2021 when X is the president. Now of course, that comparison will be there. It's not whether there is bloodshed or no bloodshed, but the issue here is we are convinced, or people tend to think that the change in leadership is actually what causes development, is what causes a transformation. Go to Burkina Faso, for example. After President Blaise Compaoré, in his overthrow in 2014, between 2014 and 2015, that country had 6 leaders. 6 leaders. Now, they forged and, of course, went into an election democratically and elected President Macron Kabore, who is actually the president now. But even after electing him through an election, choosing a president through an election, Macron Kabore, you still look at the country of Burkina Faso and there's not much difference. When you go to countries like Sierra Leone, where you have now President Madabio, who actually visited us here sometime 2, 3, 4 years ago, you look at the country and the sequences of the many presidents. Now, even just running away from Domboye in Guinea Conakry and so on, people tend to think that we would not be here if we were changing presidents. If we allowed to move from President Museveni to President Jagenda, for example, maybe, Ndugu JJ, address us on this thing. Is the change of leadership in Africa the solution to our underdevelopment, our not developing, and the answer to our socio-economic transformation as a continent?
Thank you very much, Ndugu Jagenda and the colleagues and our viewers. I think this is a very important topic of discussion. Africa, Uganda, and the world did not start today. People have existed since time immemorial. That one we know it in history. When you look at the scholarly work, people start at the times of Socrates, when they are finding democracies, and all over. They came up and said that, please, for a democracy, you must change leadership. That was the scholarly part of it. But in the practice, does it offer development? I think that one is a little relative. If it has offered transformation in some area X, it is not necessary that it offers development and transformation in area Y. For example, as you have said, if we have the USA, they came and defined their democracy with their principles. If it's offering them to move on, does that approach also offer the same to Africa? Look at China in the current times. China, they fought their battles, and they defined their system of governance. Has it delivered the transformation or development of people of China? One will say yes, because they defined what suits their environment. And the recent times, when you see that now the challenge of COVID-19, how that bloc came up to manage COVID-19 using its system of governance. I don't think if the same had happened in the United States of America, the control, or we would be having people existing. It became as the palm, people had not known it, came with the force, but the system of governance there allowed them to take control of their citizens. And up to today, we are seeing them moving. And as they are taking control of that, this level of development will not go back. Actually, China scored high level development during the COVID-19 because innovations came in and production went high. They are now looking at how they can support the global market. That was that. Let us also look at other Asian tigers. That's the normal talk about economics. What is it? What model do Asian tigers use exactly in order to be able to deliver the transformation, the change that now has spurred them to this level? Did they maintain leaders, or they took the approach of the American democracy? That's another area of study. In Uganda here, we always refer to one common good country, South Korea. Why do we refer to it? Because by the time we got into independence, we are ahead of it in terms of development. But now today, South Korea is far ahead of Uganda.
We are stuck somewhere.
We are stuck somewhere,
and
they are now donating to us and the world. So the question of change of leadership, I think, is not the primary factor. To me, I think when a society defines its interests very well, it now goes further and studies its dynamics of relationship. It goes and studies its resources, then it can define the leadership that they want to live. I think in Africa here, we are still struggling with underdevelopment because we have never had a defined understanding, a common understanding of our ideological system that should guide the governance factors. There I go to the question of ideology. And ideology means how we think and appreciate our system, our operations, and then utilize those resources to fulfill our necessary need. That's the missing gap.
Okay.
So you find somebody coming up from one plot, one country of Africa, coming up, yes, it has changed, and people will come up and clap and say, yes, there's a change. But now are the people moving in the same direction? When we don't cause the population to think and move the same direction, even if you change leaders a million times, it will never deliver the development.
Okay.
But if you have a population which is mobilized to look in the same focus, they will gather their energy and say, this is where we are going, and we must move there. So even if a leader stays over time, but when they are working towards that, and at every stage, they go through, they all clap, they say, yes, this is an achievable factor. Therefore, they'll be able to achieve the transformation the people deserve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Council Robert, welcome again. Answer the question that I just posed here. Is it a solution? Is the change of government regularly or the change in leadership a lasting solution to our issues? Like we want to do the comparisons because Ndugu Akoli was talking about the issues in Nigeria, for example. Yes, when you look at that, the movement of now, the change of power from one president to another, from one president to another, has that made Nigeria any better? Is it making Nigeria, are Nigerians content that they don't even need to move from their country to go elsewhere? Are we looking at them as a country, as an anchor state that we should benchmark and say that there is change in government? So issues are very good. Are Nigerians content that they've moved from one president to another over the years?
I think he has answered the question. The power itself does not necessarily translate into change of the leadership, does not necessarily translate into development. I just want to first give you the background of Africa. I've got a chance to travel to many countries in Africa, in Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, West Africa, and Northern part. And what I've discovered is that Africa is actually the same. We are almost at the same level of development. Even when you go to South Africa, you find the blacks are very poor.
Exactly.
I was in South Africa, I think 2 years ago. I was going to Durban. When I reached the airport, I boarded the taxi, and the black man refused to enter the taxi. He said, you are foreigners who are coming to take our jobs. I was laughing at him. I said, I'm not coming to stay. In any case, there are many South Africans doing business in Uganda. Now, when you go to West Africa, I think last year I was in Ivory Coast. When you look at how fertile the land is, you find there is a banana here. I think they don't have the way, they don't have maybe the knowledge of planting many bananas as we have them here.
Oh, that's the knowledge that they have.
No, the land is very fertile. If you go to West Africa, especially near the Atlantic Ocean. If you go to the Zambia he has been talking about, we are almost the same. Now, the question has been that I think, to me, the Africa, when we were divided, now you concentrate, for example, when you get power and you don't know how to use it for, and then it will be like nothing. Because, for example, what he was talking about, like the Malaysia, I was listening to the president, I think, who drove to, is it Malaysia? He was saying, for us, our philosophy is we want to be a friend of everybody and an enemy of none. There are people who want to do business. The Asia, they don't want to be involved in war. The China, for them, they want to do business. But here we are involved in wars between our brothers and sisters. That's what you are fighting your brother to take power, and when you take it, what do you use it for? So the question has been that because we were partitioned into small parts, and the leaders don't think beyond those small parts. And you can, and if you want to develop, you have to do business. Now, as Africa, we have not defined how we want Africa to move. I wish African Union would have moved faster than the way they are moving. So that, for example, if we are talking about if you got power, where do you get money? We are now grappling, we are talking about, for example, the pipeline. the oil pipeline from Uganda to Tanga. Do we have enough money, for example, as a country, to build that pipeline? Where do you get money? You run to World Bank, you run to IMF. For example, as Africa, for example, set up a bank to develop those projects that can...
the African Development Bank is our bank.
Yes, the African Development Bank, does it have enough money? Do we put enough money as countries so that we can finance our projects? Now, for example, me, I come from Exora. I'm at the board of DRC. Now, when I'm going to DRC, and I want to go official at the board, I pay $100. Now, movement is very difficult in Africa. When I went to Ivory Coast, I had to leave my passport at the immigration. I had to come the next day. I said, no, what the hell is this? We are the same people, but moving in Africa is very difficult. So the problem we are having in Africa, unless Africa unites, we shall always be exploited. Now, the power you are talking about, taking power in either in Uganda, or in a small country in West Africa, or a small country in Eastern Africa, you will not do much because you need the money. And there are people who are willing to exploit you. So we are being exploited as African because we don't negotiate as a bloc. We negotiate country by country, and we are at a disadvantage. So specifically taking that power you are talking about, the reason why it has not translated into development, one, we don't have a vision. Actually, because if you have, for example, we know what we want as a country, as Uganda. It doesn't matter who takes power. Because you know that the resources we have are for the Ugandans, the jobs are for Ugandans, the roads are for Ugandans, the healthcare is for Ugandans. Now, even if you take power, and there are rules which are respected, the most important are institutions. You have institutions that are respected. If you take power and you are diverting, people will say, no, our objective is this. So the question why we have not developed as a country, as an African continent as a whole, is because we don't have a vision as Africa. We're exploited country, individual country, and whoever takes power, for example, you have your master. Sometimes you cannot take your decision. If you take a decision and you don't respect what superpower are saying, you are out of power. Okay. Because they are the ones who give you money. You don't have the money. Okay. So we don't have a defined vision as Africa. And as long as we do not work together as Africans, we are going to be exploited. We have resources. We cannot cooperate with our brothers. For us, the Bantu tribe, I have some of our relatives are in DRC. I was asking my father before he passed on. I said, where was your mother born? He said he was born in Kanungu. Where are the relatives? He told me the relatives shifted to DRC. Now, I don't know them. Those are our relatives. Other relatives are in Rwanda, others are in Tanzania. So we are really the same people. But because of putting these physical barriers, we cannot move. We cannot do business in West Africa. We cannot do business in DRC. When you go to DRC, they begin seeing you as a foreigner, but you are the same people. Okay. Councillor Robert, you just talked about you traveling to these African countries, and you noticed that, yes, it is at times very expensive actually to travel on the continent as opposed to traveling out of this continent. But in 2013, when the African Union launched the Africa Dream 2063 and designing the Africa that we want, one of the flagship projects in there was establishing a single African air transport market, and that was looked at one of the things that undermines our development on the continent. For example, that time when they launched the Africa Vision 2063, a flight from Entebbe to Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, which takes about 40 minutes, was costing up to about $800. Now, the same $800 would actually fly you from Entebbe to Guangzhou in China for a flight of 9-10 hours. You know, and you just imagine, if you even tend to think that if you stand in Entebbe and make noise to somebody in Kenya, they can hear you, but it costs you that heavy to actually just get there. One of the things that they talked about was integrating the high-speed train network, and you remember the discussion that came on over the standard gauge railway and talk about all the SGRs. This is one of the things that they talked about, and you just talked about a common vision. But yet again, when we look at the Africa Vision of 2063, where we have all these things, of course silencing the guns and quite a number of things, they launched there's what they call the Ingo dams.
you know, if those dams are established, or if those dams are actually constructed, they would be the biggest in the world. Now, the biggest hydropower dams in the world are these now, here in Congo, and you know, it's just with us here. The other side, Ethiopia, of course, is putting all their energies on developing their GAD. Now, with the GAD, you still notice that there are problems internally on the continent, that as they're building the GAD, Egypt is actually making noise and saying, what are you doing? As they're building the GAD, then Sudan side is also saying, look at these things. Now, we tend to think, with the rest of us, the young Africans, thinking that, okay, maybe if we change, because our discussion is not really centered on how to develop the continent or our individual countries for socio-economic transformation, we have a lot of discussion on the politics of our country. Mutut, I want you to come in, but my producer, our producer here, Fakol, has a video here. It's just a video making, it's trending on social media. I want to look at, to just look at that video. Now, that video is in Ghana. It's in Ghana. Now, whoever shot that video is actually complaining. Look at all our money. Look at all our money. Now, that is the president of the country, and President Nana Akufo-Addo. He was elected in December, I think. Was it in December or October last year? He was elected, I think, in December, October. December last year. He's taking his second term. Now, when you look at the fleet of cars there, the person who shot that video, from wherever they were, I do not know what town that was. I don't know whether it was Tamale or Kumasi or any other town or Accra.
It can be Kumasi.
Of course, it can be Kumasi, and it can be Tamale maybe, but one of the towns now, the person shooting that video is very concerned that, look at that now. But the power has changed. You know, when you look at the democracies in Ghana, we all want to admire them in Ghana. Say, from 1992, we go and benchmark there. They've had a president who comes on 8 years and he goes, another president comes on 8 years and he goes, another president comes 4 years and he goes. But the people in Ghana, even with so many presidents since 1992, are actually making noise, and they don't seem to be happy about that.
Very soon before he comes, I've told you that the change in Africa has they have not done much. Even in South Africa, even in Ghana or Nigeria. You know, the Nigerians are very proud. But when you go to some parts of Nigeria, people are very poor. At one time, Nigerians were saying we are the richest in Africa. But when you look at the standard of living on some people in the village, it is so the sad story of Africa is the same.
It is the same.
We are almost the same.
Whether we change leaders every day or keep leaders in power.
So the question is what we are talking about, that vision we are talking about. President Kagame, I think the African Union one time, they talked about having one passport. Uganda was the only one which allowed people to go without a visa. Other countries refused it. So what you are talking about, can we have a common vision as Africa? And we are allowed to do business together. Those development you are talking about, those projects.
The African passport and free movement.
Yes, the free movement.
It's one of the flagship projects of the African Union. You know, it's one of the top 10.
Yes.
The African passport and the free movement. That's what you're talking about.
So how can we ease transport? Can we ease communication? Can we ease movement? And maybe we need a referendum. Maybe the presidents have been talking around. We needed to involve everybody and maybe have a referendum to agree on some of these issues. Because the presidents have talked around and sometimes these things don't move. So we want to involve all of the Africans. And then we see how maybe we can move.
You've just seen the president's convoy, President Nana Akufo-Addo here of Ghana. Now, that country, whenever we talk about democracies, of course, elections, the democratic experts or the election experts will tell you, just look at what happened in Ghana. One president comes and is voted out of office, he exchanges power and gives it to another person. But the people in Ghana here are actually saying, look at our money. They are complaining. They don't seem to be benefiting from the change. Whether these ones voted for Mahama or they voted for Nana Akufo-Addo, that is not what is changing their lives in Ghana.
Yes, at the same time, ironically, let alone that people have not benefited from that change. Have the presidents who are involved in this change also benefited?
As presidents or
as as individuals too? Because for me,
that's a very hard question for me to answer.
For me, I wouldn't have a problem if a head of state can have 100 vehicles, if that's what is supposed to be provided for. I have no problem with that.
If that's what they agreed upon.
Yes. And I would not have a problem.
And you know, when they show that like that, then they will bring some prime minister in one of the Nordic countries riding a bicycle or sitting in a train, and they say, now look at the African presidents in this very huge convoy, and the prime minister of another country is actually seated in a bus. Or
and I wouldn't have a problem to see a prime minister somewhere or a president also riding on a bicycle. If, in fact, we visited one of the heads of state, I think was it New Zealand, yes. And the guy is living in some old house somewhere. And you know, but that is what the environment provides for, no problem. Now, the problem is the number of vehicles are against the local person, the user person, the normal person, what the relationship there. I mean, when we like, and I don't, for whatever reason, we're comparing ourselves with the countries like the US. If you saw a president of US driving on a road, I mean, there's nothing you have seen there. The number of vehicles that you ordinarily maybe have never seen in your life. But that's what is provided for a head of state for that office. Now, my other problem is, last time you remember, when my friend in Zambia lost an election, and one of the things that he had to ask for was a house.
President Chagwa Lungu.
Yes. That the state has to have a house
for me,
for a retiring president. And you have been living that fleet. So for me, that's the irony.
So you're trying to attempt your very question that you asked me.
Yes.
Whether they also benefit individually from the change.
So we don't have to blame the presidents who are victims of this process. It is the whole system that under which our presidents and individuals are operating. Can we then change this system to factor in the benefit for everyone, including those who are involved? It also shows you that those people who are involved, the leaders who are involved in this process, sometimes don't understand what they're involved in. Because you cannot live that luxury life and then you are going to look for a muzigo somewhere for you to be able to be accommodated as a head of state. But that notwithstanding, yesterday, yes, this friend of yours, the former speaker of Malawi, who committed suicide in parliament because parliament could not get him a vehicle. I mean, these are the problems we're talking about. We're looking at Africans with poverty, like has been saying that you move around Africa, but you see poverty all over the place. And for me, I still believe that given now this situation, the issue that when I'm elected a president, I'm going to fight poverty does not even make any sense. No one is going to fight poverty because last time we said even the US, we saw people living in boxes in the streets, the homeless. Now, what we need is not fight poverty, it's not fight disease, it's not fight ignorance, but if it is poverty, let's improve the living conditions of our people. Then poverty will sustainably be fought.
Okay.
Now,
yes.
Now, when you also look at because for us, the ordinary people, we think those in power are surviving because of our money. That's the guy saying all this, you look at our money. Yes. And then those in power are thinking that to be able to sustain that power, they must be able to do something that will make them look good before the people for the next election. Last, you may be aware that in Africa today, we may not be having many of our statesmen as per se, but we're having politicians who are looking for the next election. You win an election today, but you are living in that fear for the next election. So most of the things that you are doing are not if you are talking about the infrastructure that you need to have a road moving like the African Union thing, having the main road from South Africa to Cairo and
Cape to Cairo.
Alexandria, then how does that affect your election? Does it benefit? I mean, does it contribute to your next election next year? Maybe not. So what about my small road somewhere where I can do, and then people see that I'm doing something back at home? Now, if the African Union is the heads of state at the African Union are talking much about the African development and the African agenda. Maybe they are talking to themselves.
Okay.
How do we make Africa talk about the development of Africa beyond the boardrooms of the African Union, beyond the normal interactions of the heads of state of Africa? Like we said last time, many of them actually have problems at home. So how do we expand that discussion that it can go beyond the heads of state into the technical people that we have in this continent, people who have done a lot of science, a lot of engineering, a lot of that we can, I know the commissions have been formed that address particular issues of the continent, but I think the time demands that we move faster than we are moving today.
Ndugu Wakol, when we go to Guinea Conakry, for example, where today, in just a few hours, Mamadou Doumbouya will be sworn in as an interim president. Now they say whoever is sworn in as interim president now will not be on the ballot to organize, but there are no timelines to this, and they just need to prepare and see what really happens. But remember that before Doumbouya overthrows or takes over from Conde, Conde came through an election 10 years ago. He contested. Now he was in the opposition. He contested. He won an election. Then he came back for another election. He won that election. His problems came when they now say he staged the coup against their own constitution by now again getting into more terms than prescribed. But there was a time when Conde came into office, and the people in Guinea were actually happy. The question is, when you look at Conde now, 10 years ago, when he came to power, what was life there like? When you look at the countries, the other countries, go to the immediate ones. Chakwera recently, Lazarus Chakwera taking over from Peter Mutharika in Malawi. We are now in Zambia, where my very good president Hakainde Hichilema is tweeting about everything. I want to tell you what I saw in the United States. I want to tell you about this. We are going to do this. We're going to do this. He's engaging the public. He's engaging the citizenry of Zambia on social media every other time to actually tell them this is what is happening. This is what is happening. But we've seen governments coming and changing. We've seen people coming. We saw his president Edgar Lungu come to power, not so long ago, and he knew that there will be this other election. Now, away from he's talked about the leaders themselves, whether they're also beneficiaries of these same processes. But whenever there is a change in government, when you go to Nigeria, where you talked about, when Buhari came and he took over from Goodluck Jonathan in that election, of course, the history was this man has contested, he tried 5 times, he did all the things, and finally Nigerians said, good luck, thank you, you've served us, we now need Buhari. When Buhari came, of course, the issues was economy, the inflation shot up, and all the things. The Boko Haram actually even just go to the heights, and quite a number of things. And many people thought that maybe he would not even be re-elected. And he had, of course, a very bad term health-wise. And we saw that. But of course, moving from Goodluck Jonathan to Muhammadu Buhari, to the people in maybe on the continent and in Nigeria, they thought that, yes, now that we have a new leader, we the voters, we the Wananchi, we the common people tend to think that, number one, my life is going to change, health systems are going to change, the education system is going to change, the economy is going to change, I will have some money in my pockets, because they even promise us money in our pockets, they promise us jobs, they promise us all these things. And we only get to see that the president has served the term and these things are not happening. So just looking at, for example, there is fanfare in Guinea, for example, in Conakry and everywhere. Apart from now having Doumbouya now in the annals of Guinea as one of their leaders, does this translate anything to the people who are on the streets now celebrating the fall of Alpha?
Well, thank you, Jagenda. Jagenda, see, the issue I just want to re-emphasize is that as when the change is democratic, institutional, and with popular support, it sets the ground for development. Change alone does not bring development, but it sets the ground for development. And when a country has such an arrangement that is very elaborate and clear on how one ascends to any political office, it in other words creates some kind of stability and gives people some kind of patience. For example, in Uganda here, let's look at Uganda. That in Uganda, not until NRM came to power, serving at local governments was through appointment. But when NRM came, it said, no, every office has to be elective. You get it? So implying that whoever felt that I should serve the country at maybe local government level, they know how to ascend to that. And indeed, changes have been happening when they see that this chairman LOC5, chairman LOC3 has not served them, and they have brought in somebody. Now, let's look at why is it that at times these changes, good changes, do not necessarily translate into development. Currently, the cost of election has become so high that when Jagenda Semakula is elected the president of DRC, the next 5 years, he's busy mobilizing resources and the machinery to win the next election. So he's not even concentrating on developing the country. His interest is on winning the other election. So so all the parties are derailed. Let's get to Zambia, where they've just had election. Edgar Lungu, whereas his concentration was on infrastructure, which is development.
And he did it.
Yeah, and he did it.
He did it.
But his cadres, the PF cadres, were busy preparing for the next election. So you find that there was a disconnect, whereas the other was looking at this.
Cadaism was one of his
the
biggest
cadre is doing a different thing. And that's what happens elsewhere. That again also, yes. But also another issue is that at times, you see, when you move faster than the people, in Africa, I can give you 4 presidents who have lost elections by concentrating on development, leaving aside the welfare of the people. Because there's a situation where
social development.
Yes, there's where people are not necessarily into infrastructure. They want to know how much. I mean, they want to know that at the end of the day, I can be able to put food on my table. It happened to John Mahama in Ghana. It really happened to Goodluck. Yes, it happened to Goodluck Jonathan. It has just happened to Edgar Lungu. You get it? So that at times when leaders concentrate on infrastructure development, then the people are they say we are not going to eat roads, we are not going to eat to eat aeroplanes and so on. So what I can say is that one, as Africa, these changes can translate into real development if we can look at how do we reduce on the cost of elections. Actually, everywhere in Africa, elections are very expensive. It has turned from democracy to monocracy. Whoever has money wins it all. Because even in Zambia, the man who has come on Hakainde Hichilema is a rich man. He's not a poor man. He's a billionaire. And people are saying if he has managed to develop himself, at least he has demonstrated that he will also develop the world. That's why they're saying Barry will fix it. So he's not a poor man. You go to Malawi, when Hastings Kamuzubanda was defeated, the man who defeated Bakili Muluzu was a billionaire. You see, so you're playing that also in Africa, they believe in that. Now, lastly, Mututa did talk about something very interesting, that do even the people who benefit from these changes benefit, in quotes, because you see most of them coming out and they're really crying, you need this, you need that, you need this, you need that. And I think that's why corruption is high, because our systems do not give hope. In other words, our social security, right from presidency to the lower person, that if a call is going to retire from UBC, if my good friend JJ is going to retire from the ministry, what is the social security that after work he's going to live the same life? You get it? So the same thing that presidency, that somebody's, and that's why perhaps some of them really find it hard to leave power. Exactly. Because what is the social security? So I think these are issues that we need to address as a continent, as a people. That reducing on the cost of elections, looking at the social security is not only for political leaders, but for everyone. And then secondly, putting up a mechanism that gives hope to every ambitious person on how they can ascend to leadership.
You've been noting a few things here from the submissions of colleagues. Add on to them.
Well, media have been noting, as you have put it, and I've been thinking and talking to myself as colleagues are submitting. what they have said very correct. But what are the push factors to Africa in that dilemma? Then I've been reflecting.
What gets us there?
Historically, yes. Historically, what was the construct of Africa? You know very well, and my colleagues here, center of civilization started where?
On this continent.
In this continent. In this continent. And so what happened? You know the empire of the Mali Empire, how were they growing? The castles which we see in London were there in the Mali Empire. Then from there, you look at now the historic empire that, let's say this one in Ethiopia. How were they? To me, I've been reflecting that Africans were the people with civilization, with values, and which values were pro-people, and if at all they are not tampered with, we would be at different level.
True.
And this question of change of leadership, they had defined of how leadership must move on. So it was not a question of the European influence of democracy. People were there, but they are serving. Yes, there could have been contradiction like in a society, but that system was really delivering Africa. You have ever heard about the Trans-Sahara trade?
Trans-Sahara, yes.
Trans-Sahara trade. People are producing and moving along the trek to go and do business. They along from the East African borders to the Western African borders, and across the whole Africa. So that was the construct of Africa. So even in the business, I assume that now, if at all there was no external force that tampered with African processes, we would have been developed. So now we cannot talk about the leadership delivering on transformation if we don't address that force which distorted the historical formation of the African continent.
Very important. In the neighborhood here in Kenya, we have, of course, had elections recently, moving from one president to another president. And when you hear the politicians in Kenya now, when you hear the vibe now, for example, in 2013, I was in Kenya myself. I observed the election in Kenya, and I was there in 2017, still for that same election, when we saw Uhuru come to power with his comrade, Samoei Ruto. When you listen to Ruto today, of course, he feels that his being in power as deputy president has not helped the people of Kenya. And he says there should be another approach. His approach now is, he's calling it the bottom-up approach of helping the hustlers. But you can imagine that there was a time when we saw power changing from Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki coming to Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta. And of course the people, as in Kenya myself, as in Kenya, I attended many of these rallies in Kasarani, in Nyayo Stadium, as there, and I saw, you know, and you could see the vibe amongst Kenyans. Today, one of the persons in charge of the country, the deputy president, tells you, no. You know, we need to, but now, where does that leave the Kamba, the Kikuyu, the Embu, where does it leave them? Because there'll be another election next year. You know, there'll be another election in August next year. And Kenyans will still go to the polls, and they will choose a president after Kenyatta. There will be a president after Kenyatta. Now, globally, we'll look at these things and say the Kenyan economy has increased, the economy is growing. They can even actually announce them and tell them you are now either this middle income status or whatever it wants to be. But when you get back to Kenya, you'll still find these hustlers. You'll go to Kibera and you'll find in that slum of Kibera where the people who were like that when it was Kibaki or even the late Moi are the same people who are there with Kenyatta, or whether it's Odinga or where is the problem? What aren't we doing right? Council.
Just before he comes, I just want to rest my argument. When you look at that, these African presidents who sit in AU, they may come with a goodwill, but now there is that foreign arm, because African question will never be resolved without resolving the global forces.
Do you have the capacity to even do that?
Yes, we can do it. And how can we do it? If we go into a robust mobilization. A robust mobilization, Africans start seeing in the same direction, the presidents go there and they see the same direction like the population. Then when you go there, you build a critical mass that is going to counter the forces of globalization. Because we have all the wealth, we have all the resources. To us, it will not be a very, very complicated issue. But because we have not addressed it in that direction, one goes there with a very good will, with a very good agenda, and then who will come in? World Bank will come in immediately. And will say, please, I need you to give you money. And because you want to fulfill on your obligation, your commitment to the population, you have nothing to say please, you go in the money. And that's the first captivation you're going to. So, however much one is good with those global factors, the global phenomena, when they are not addressed based on a fundamental ideological understanding as Africa. And that's why I brought in the civilization, we shall never move. Look at our education system. Is it set by us across Africa? Because we have moved. We had that kind of universal outlook, but education system shapes the thinking of the people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might take a break very shortly, but just before we get into the break, Council, I'd invited you to come to this conversation.
Yes, I just want to say what he's talking about. I think as Africa we need a conference of non-state actors. And then we bring these issues. We have a genuine, candid conference all over Africa, and we meet, and then we present these issues to the heads of state.
Of the non-state actors now?
Yes, because when the heads of state meet, sometimes they don't consult us. We don't know what they talk about. So, and then, so we need that conference. And then on the my core issue, what we have been talking about at the individual country, I normally listen to the inauguration speech of Ronald Reagan. When he was being inaugurated, I think in 1980, 1981, he was saying that I've listened to that speech over and over again. Never mind, he also had his shortcomings during his tenure. But he said, it's time that we are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. That so, in the end, he says, it is time to check the leaders who have grown beyond the needs of the governed. So now the needs of the governed, if we have a leader, because that's what I was talking about, you must, if we are taking leadership, we must have an objective why you are taking that leadership. I think there was a country in the Nordic where a president was chased because he bought underwears. He was given money to go and shop when he became president, buy suits, but he bought underwears. And when he was giving accountability, he said, among the things I bought underwears. And the cities were enraged. They said, how can you use our money to buy underwears? And he was chased. So there are things that African leaders, in Africa being a president, you are everything. You can do everything. That's why I'm saying it is not, I don't want to mention any country, but I'm saying being an African president, you are everything. The whole resources are yours, but you forget the concerns, the needs of the governed. So we are saying we need the civic competence of the Africans to be able to make their leaders accountable. Okay. He's talking about the elections, but the issue is about can we make these political offices unattractive, so that when we become an MP, we don't earn 30 million.
You go to serve.
Yeah, you go to serve. And it should be the teachers, the doctors who are paid, so that people who really go for leadership, you are going there to serve.
Okay.
We have very many businessmen, for example, in this parliament. I'm very sorry for the MPs, but you have a parliament.
You're very sorry for Ugandans.
Yes, you have a parliament of 500 MPs, but you only, if you count, you have less than 100 who can speak on the floor of parliament. So what are they doing? They are doing business.
We sent them there to get
to make money and do their businesses instead of discussing our issues. So that is the problem we are grappling all over Africa, not only Uganda, but across the board.
Well, just hold it there. We'll take a very short break, and we should have ended our Pan-African Friday here. Normally, we normally end it at this time, but because we had another program before, our producers actually extended us a little bit, as we also wait for His Excellency the President, who is supposed to speak to us here, addressing us on the commemoration of the Day of the Older Persons. We'll take a break and return shortly for another few minutes before we again sign out. Welcome.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
My home, I smile when I think of you, Uganda. My home. My home, I dance when I look at you, Uganda. My home, oh my Uganda.
I know with you I'll always stay forever. I know, because I feel that we belong together. My home, under the sun so bright, under the moon at night, on my heart, mommy, oh my Uganda.
Hey, mama.
My Uganda. My Uganda. My Uganda. My Uganda. Nikukunda. My Uganda. Amari alemira. My Uganda.
Nyoe nikugonza.
My Uganda.
Amina ngojo. Amina ngojo.
My Uganda.
At MTN, we look forward to starting another exciting journey together to grow our home, Uganda.
Tonight on UBC.
Let's start with Uganda Airlines. We hear lots of things within there. Corruption allegations, shake-up of administration and things like that.
Over there allegations of corruption, I can't go into that detail because there is still an investigation going on.
We have information that UNRA is being brought back under you Ministry of Transport.
Yes, that was a cabinet decision. The process is on. Is the ministry ready to take on? Yes, we have made some preparations.
Entebbe Expressway.
Yes.
There is too much worry that people are going to be charged money on this road.
Are Ugandans going to pay money on the toll? Yes.
Railway services. They're not very vibrant like they would be.
Uganda's Railway Corporation suffered when it was concession to RVR.
The Kenya you're talking about, they recently launched this speed tube.
Yeah, but we shall get there. Because you can't say my neighbor has got a second wife, I should also get a second wife.
Tonight.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Well, thank you so much and welcome back from that short break as we continue with our last segment of the Pan-African Friday today. Gentlemen, we now need to close this in our last few minutes. And I want to hear from you. Are we all saying that change of leadership is not a solution to African problems? So must we have presidents forever? Must we have systems forever? Must we keep it just like that? Where is our salvation? Where is our redemption? What needs to be done to achieve this agenda 2063 of the Africa that we want? Because when you look on the paper, when you look into the books, when you look into the writings, the Africa that we desire, the Africa that we dream about over 2063 is that Africa that everybody would want to belong to or everybody would want to be in. How do we get there? Ndugu JJ.
Yeah, as the area I said, you see, people forgive me, but my orientation is in the mass approach. And that's why I really love our president. His outlook is about the masses. You must be able to address the popular masses, to be able to talk to them and be with them. So that now, as you move along, as you put programs in place, you are moving along with them. And maybe that's why it answers the question for Uganda. Uganda is unique. His Excellency has been in power for 35 years now, sir. But when you look at the parameters of society, which measures how one would be, you can see that they have been very good steady progress. Why? Because of the analysis of social problems and the addressing the correct line, both politically, socially, and militarily. And that's why now today, in Africa and the world over, people are posing that it's a true fact that now our Uganda Post Defense Forces have built a national and global character. That's the direction. And comes out, that one has not been achieved out of the blue, out of studying the dynamics of society. So I feel that now, if that one is reciprocated to the region, East African community, then from there to the entire African society, then we can achieve the Agenda 2063. But without going to that one, then we shall not be able to achieve that one. We shall go into the doldrum like that. And they have been able to insulate ourselves against the powers of imperialism because of the strength of the people. You remember, just in 1987, after 87-88, if I remember, what did the people say? They say, reduce on the number of the military. But that's when we are fighting insurgents in the entire Uganda. And you are telling us to reduce the number of soldiers. If it was not the ideological leadership of our president here, that would be the end of the revolutionary struggle. But they said, okay, fine, you are reducing on the number, let us move ahead. And tactically navigated, and again we had now many people's soldiers coming up and taking the spirit of the population. That was a very, very serious critical action which came up to be able to fulfill our interests.
Okay.
So, in the totality, mobilization and mindset change and outlook is very, very important. Africa should start thinking in the same direction. And let us not be about let us not be worried about the geographical space. Other countries have done it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Very important. And Ndugu Akol, coming to you for the same, there's an Africa that we all want. Now, in this Africa, we have Uganda, we have Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Guinea, Conakry, we have the Gambia, we have all these things. We have everything in here. And what happens is, as we anticipate to achieve the Africa that we want in 2063, we also have challenges and discrepancies in the changes of governments, for example, where we are. A few days ago, this actually, the last month when we saw Mamadi Doumbouya overthrowing Alpha Conde, he's actually castigating the African Union as a bunch of people who cannot solve the continent's problems. But now he's going to be sworn in as president, and by default, you would imagine and think he is also going to get solace from the same African Union. Now, he's going to join the same club because, you know, he's supposed to be welcome now, he's supposed to come to the same club. He's going to organize an election the other day, and whatever happens, you know, he's going to be leader of Guinea, and he's coming to the same club here. Now, he has his own sentiments. He responds differently to the chairperson of the commission of the summit. He responds differently to the regional body, the ECOWAS. He's coming into the same fray. With all these changes, of course, now, where do we see Africa getting when you have the ECOWAS saying, this is our advocacy, but you have a member of ECOWAS who is saying, look at you, you know, exactly, castigating them and look at them as time wasters. Where are we?
Well, I just want to, because when we are coming in for this last segment of this Pan-African Friday, you did say that change is really not necessarily a factor in development. I just want to maybe set the record straight that no one can resist change. Change is a fact of life, and whoever resists change, change actually breaks you. Change changes you. The other issue is, my only problem is that when people look at change in political leadership in terms of presidents alone. In Uganda, whoever says we've not had change is lying to himself. You look at the turnover of member of parliament. Every 5 years, we get about 70% new faces. Every 5 years, chairpersons LOC5s, we get
to maintain our problems.
We get some new people.
To maintain our problems.
Yes, so implying that the people realize that no, these people. So, and one other thing also I want us people to understand, that change is tagged on time. As the Bible says, there's time for everything. Yes, change is tagged on time. So when the time for particular changes come, it will all be there. But my issue here that I really want us to appreciate and understand is that Africa as a continent, different regions, different states have their different challenges and aspirations. The problem is that at times the political changes take time to master, because remember, all these African countries they were concoctions of the colonialists. Now it has taken us more than half a century for every country for the leadership to understand the people. For example, here, like the project called Uganda, every leader who has come on has always gambled on how to bring the different segments, the different interests together. And perhaps that's why at times it derails development. That's why at times it derails for us to come up with a national agenda and a consensus. Then lastly, he did talk about a conference of non-state actors. And I will take him back to
because he asked a question and said, when these people are in the AU, who are they speaking to? Are they speaking to themselves, or they are speaking to the rest of Africa?
You know, when he talks about a conference, African Conference for Non-State Actors, it takes him back to the 1958 All People's Conference in Ghana, in Accra. You get it? Because ideally, all the people because at that time the issue was fighting colonialism. So these Africans were non-state actors. But 2, 3 years, 4, 5 years down the road, they were the very people in government actually, and making the same mistakes. So if you talk about non-state actors, actually what we are seeing now is that people will always use those platforms to gain political power, and once they are there, they are just doing the same. Yeah.
Okay. Ndugu Mtuta?
At the same time, when you look at that, the issue of the external forces, I think it's also the problem of Africa itself. We need to understand who are our friends and who should be the people we trust with this, because we have seen people come to leadership. We have seen people come to leadership through coups. We have seen people come to leadership through elections. We have seen people come through leadership through the support of some of these external forces. And you have like biggest part of West Africa. Like now we have seen a lot of pull and push by the people from the external forces. Now, Ethiopia was seen as one of the countries, progressive states today, but you see, 2019 there's the coup in the Amhara. In 2020, we are now having another one in the Tigray, and so when you look at some of these, the underlying factors are not typically African. There's something coming from elsewhere. So I think other than having the conference for the non-state actors, we also need to find a way of cushioning ourselves from a lot of these external influences. Talking about Korea, he raised the issue of Korea, for example. How did they do that? In fact, at one point, the president of Korea suspended. Say we are not going, for the short time, we are not going to listen to IMF. We are not going to listen to World Bank. Let's do our own things first until such, because they are telling you, do this. They was telling us decentralized. No, decentralized was not one of them.
Privatization.
Privatize. Then the civil servants reorganize. But then you realize that after privatization, you are privatizing, but somewhere people have their own. And I think I liked Moi who said, Nita, I will privatize everything. Like in ndege ya Mkenya, he refused to privatize the airline. And it, of course, it made losses, fine, but it turned out it was the biggest advert for Kenya, for the rest of the region and for the rest of the continent. And now that you have the Ethiopian. So you realize that one knows that if you cannot, Africans have been imprisoned in their small cottages, that this small country, Uganda, you cannot leave it without the permission of the next person. Even Uganda alone, you cannot leave. But elsewhere people are moving. So I think these are some of the things that as Africans we need to look at and see. Why should we curtail even within ourselves, our movement. How can we do business? Because Africa has a very big population for business. Without selling to any other person, can we do business within Africa? And that's the beginning point. If we can do business within Africa, amongst Africa, that's going to be even more important than looking for business elsewhere. So, like Ndugu was saying, I think there is need to, first of all, have open minds as Africans and work together as Africans. These small differences that bring us troubles, and they have this one. We also have that problem of the, we talked about South Africa, that South Africa was meant to look like it was different from the rest of the neighboring Africa, the South Africans themselves. Then we have the Northern Africa, which seem to look different, seem to behave like they're different. In fact,
like they're not Africans.
Yeah, they can ask you, how is Africa? Like
exactly.
was saying.
The Arabs ask you how Africa
So some
is.
of these disconnects needs to be addressed, so that when the African Union is sitting as a class of people of Africa, African origin, African descent, and then we can discuss issues that concern Africa. Last time we were saying, even these issues of issues, like we said, if someone sent me a message says, why are you saying that the African Union should vet the constitution? Is said, no, if the demand is people driven, then let the African Union say, no, I think this is okay. We can have this one okayed, and we can change that constitution. Then we can avoid some of these conflicts that we're having today, because the decision and the wish of the people has been reflected and vetted. So for me, what I think the African Union should do, and the African leaders should do, is to open up, to be more open-minded within Africa before we can even think of people from elsewhere.
Okay, let me have your final take, Ndugu Council.
Very quickly, I have 3 points.
With your, he reminded you of all the All Africa Conference of.
Very quickly, 3 points.
The non-state actors.
I still emphasize that we need an African conference for non-state actors,
who eventually become state actors.
And then we really talk about these things, and then we shall present them. We present them to the head of state to take action. So that's number one. Number two, at a national level, you know, each and every country has these tribes. It is not only Uganda where we have 50 tribes. In Uganda, for them, they only have 3, but they have also failed to agree on rotational. Even in other countries, you find there are major tribes. So I think what we need to do, and I think to agree what is taking place in Kenya, what President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila are saying. Yes, they are saying, let's address these historical injustices about the tribes. If tribe A has ruled for long, let's allow this other tribe also to rule, to address those historical injustices. So what I'm saying is, like, for example, Uganda, we need to sit and find out a lasting solution. We borrow the issue of Netherlands, no, Switzerland, where this leadership is rotational. If we have a national objective, it doesn't matter who comes. You can come for 3 or 5 years, and we know what we want as a country. So for example, if each region can present and say, Central, you are going to read for 3 years. North, you are going to read, and then but we have a national objective. So the Central will
all of us come to build this one agenda.
Yes.
Not everybody coming with their own.
Yes, they are not coming. We have an agenda as a country. So now the Central will give us their best. If we say North, the North will give us their best. If we say West, so at a national level on each and every country, they need to sit and address those historical injustices. Not ruling people by force. Because that one is by force. Then last year. Last year, we need to make leaders really accountable, so that they mind about the wishes of the people, because you can pretend for a long time. Finally, what happened, for example, in Libya? We used to admire Libya. By the time at the peak of Gaddafi, there was only one person, I think like 2, who were in exile. Everybody would go to study in the UK, in America, and they would come back because everybody had a job. But because people of keeping people, you are ruling them and you don't have a way out of how you are going to end. That's why people burst out and they distract that. It was really a very big disruption because Libya was doing very well. So every time, yes, every time you are a leader, we need to have a way out. Okay. So that now that kind of transition is smooth.
JJ had a very good point on the submission of imperialism, that when we are on that trajectory, then we get disruptions. You're trying to build this, but of course there's somebody out there who does not want to see a united Africa. There's somebody out there who does not want to see an organized Africa. There's somebody out there who does not want to see a seemingly coming together Africa. So yes, that also needs to be captured. And of course there's somebody out there who says we should get away this one and bring this one, because this one can actually moot our agenda. Exactly. We need to be very mindful about these things. Yes. We just want to thank you so much for being part of our Pan-African Friday today. We'll stop the discussion here and to just let you know that His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni is going to be addressing the nation on commemoration of the Day of the Elderly Persons shortly hereafter. But also remind you that tonight at 8 p.m. His Excellency the President will still deliver a presidential address to the nation of Uganda. That will be live on UBC here tonight at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
I was actually going to say at 2 p.m. but that will be at 8 o'clock tonight, and it will be live here. His Excellency will be speaking to us on the issues that he has set to talk to us about, whether it's COVID, whether it's national security, whether it's economy, whether it's a presidential address that we need to brace ourselves. So we stop it here, wishing you just the very best of this Friday, and of course the weekend and the new month, and a happy birthday to Dr. Gladys Namuswe, Dr. Gladys Namuswe Wanika, the wife to Dr. Betty Wanika, celebrating her birthday today, and every October born baby out there. Forgotten my country, my name is Uganda Samakola Ziksoka. Blessings and good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.